Today is Friday, Parashat Shemot. We're starting a new book in the Torah. It's the second book, and a book that will take us from the time of the suffering in Egypt as slaves and going out from Egypt, the Exodus, and after the Exodus, the receiving of the Torah, and then after the receiving of the Torah, there will be also the building of the Mishkan, and it's a tremendous book in terms of the history of the Jewish people, from the Exodus to the receiving of the Torah to the building the Mishkan, the holy tabernacle that traveled with them in the desert. But the whole book is called Shemot. Shemot means names, and these are the names of the children of Israel, Habaim Mitzrayma, who are coming to Egypt. This name for a book that covers so much of our very important history as a nation, by giving it as a title, Names, is very indicative of the importance of names, the name of a person, and especially in preserving our Jewish identity. Hachamim tell us that because of three things, the Jewish people had the merit to go out of Egypt: that they kept their Jewish names, that they had their noticeably Jewish clothing, and that they spoke the Hebrew Lashon HaKodesh. And these three things, according to the Midrash, is what gave them the merit to go out of Egypt. But these three things, name, Hebrew language, and clothing that is typically Jewish, is so that you noticeably, so these three things are definitely associated with the identity as a Jew. And therefore, when we think of a name, sometimes to give a name to a new child who was born, it's to realize that the name has a lot of importance as to the identity of the person, and even can have an impact on the quality and what happens with that child, because the word Shem, which is name in Hebrew, and the word Sham, there, is the same letters, which mean the name is the essence of what is there. And interestingly enough, the parasha of this week that tells us about Yocheved and Miriam. Yocheved was the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. Miriam was the sister of Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were both midwives. But the Torah tells us that they were called, Paro called them Shifra and Pu'ah. Why not Yocheved and Miriam? What is this name Shifra and Pu'ah? Actually, what happened is Paro gave them Egyptian names. Shifra and Pu'ah are Egyptian names, because he wanted, by giving them an Egyptian name, to get them to switch from their typically compassionate and merciful and kind quality to having an Egyptian identity, to switch to cruelty towards the children that are born, to throw them into the Nile. Those boys that, Orat Tashlichu, you'll throw it into the Nile. And by giving them an Egyptian name, he wanted to sort of like change their identity to be more like an Egyptian lady rather than a Jewish lady. What he didn't understand and realize is the word Shifra may be a name in Egyptian, but in Hebrew, it has a very positive significance. Shifra meshaperet et havalat. She improves the baby. She takes care of the baby. So the name that he gave her as an Egyptian name, actually, when you pronounce it in Hebrew, it has a positive connotation. And the same thing with the name Pu'ah for Miriam, had a positive connotation in terms of cooing and taking care of the baby, etc. So this year is another example why names are so important for a person. And when a person is given a name, it has an impact on the being of the person, and not to take lightly about shortening names, or and definitely not to give nicknames to people. That's it's isur min Torah. That's asur to give a nickname to someone rather than his name. So the names, the more we can keep our Jewish names, the more we are strengthening our Jewish identity. And it's a beautiful gift that you give your child, as you give him a Jewish name with a good Jewish identity and significance that could help him throughout his lifetime and future generations as well. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.